Thank you all for joining us for the Self-Care, Balance, and Resilience workshop. Joining us today is Dr. Candice Burton, PhD, RN, AFN, BC, Associate Professor, and Director of Doctoral Education, Nursing. They'll be teaching us about beneficial tactics to prioritize self-care, maintain balance, and cultivate resilience amidst the demands of academic and personal life. I'm going to hand it over to them to get us started.
I had to find my mute button. You'd think we would all know where those are by now. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming today. I'm going to take a slightly different approach to this topic, only because I think probably most of you know what self-care works for you. So I want to actually talk a little bit more about balance and resilience than about self-care, but I also want to talk about why this is important. You realize this workshop is being presented by a nurse, so you're going to get the healthcare angle on this. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. So first of all, balance and resilience. I tried to come up with as many things as I figure we all have on our plates here that might be affecting your ability to think, function, sleep, and get your work done where you need to. And as you can see, that's quite a lot of things, and quite a lot of factors in why we might be feeling like balance and resilience are sort of nothing that's going on in our lives right now. I've been in academia for 20 years and I feel almost as crazy today as I did the first day I started. So I just want you to know that you're not alone, and that if this sounds like an impossible dream, you're not the only one who thinks that. And hopefully we're going to work out some ways for you to get past that. So I try to meditate regularly, and I'll explain why a little bit further on into the presentation. And I did a meditation the other morning, a guided meditation, and the first thing that the woman said was, "Aren't you tired? Aren't you tired?" And I was like, "Yes, yes, I am very tired." And then I thought, of course we're tired. We don't always know that we're tired. We just think that this is how we exist, right? That this is sort of how we function in the world, and that we're in grad school or we're in academics or we're, whatever we are in addition to being in academics. And that's why we're tired. The reality is, though, that there are plenty of reasons why we're tired. So we've all just been through a massive trauma, called the COVID pandemic, along with all kinds of things that resulted from that, along with all kinds of political and social upheaval that have been going on that are hitting all of us in different ways. And for many of us, there are also these kinds of invisible things, not just the social things and the things that are going on in the wider world, but the things that we have to live with as people every single day. Some of you may be affected by long haul COVID. If you are, I'm very sorry, and I would be happy to talk with you about how you can manage that a little bit better. I do have some work in that area. Others certainly have other kinds of trauma that you carry around with you: historical trauma, physical trauma, childhood trauma, the trauma of being someone who has an intersectional identity as a member of a minority, a vulnerable population, or some other disenfranchised group. So we're already walking around with all this stuff, right? We're all affected by the social stuff, the pandemic, everything that caused, all of the disruptions that happened to our own lives, the lives of our family and friends, people around us. Plus, we're carrying whatever we carry with us on a day-to-day basis. So I want you to first take a minute and acknowledge yourself for being upright at this moment. Because whether you have any of this or all of this or some of this and some of that and none of the other thing, you are dealing with a lot because you are a human being in a difficult time and you're in grad school. So you got a lot on your plate regardless. And I want to show you a little bit about what that actually means in terms of your physical and mental health and why we need to think about finding some ways to restore balance and resilience for all of us. Some of you may be familiar with the term allostatic load. Okay, this is actually a biological, neurological phenomenon that was first described by Bruce McEwen. Bruce has sadly passed away. But I'm going to walk you through this diagram, especially for those of you who are not life science folk or healthcare folk, so that you will know what's going on here. So here, this is your brain. This is your brain on stress, okay? Which could be any and all of these. Okay, up here are the environmental stressors. major life events, trauma and abuse. Okay. Any of those can cause this feeling of stress. Okay. Whether or not there's an actual threat, if you have any of this stuff going on, your system is sort of primed for disaster. Okay. This is where lizard brain comes in, where we all have that fight or flight, fawn, whatever response, right? So if you're feeling stressed, then the stress may be compounded by any or all of these. You may have some of them all at the same time. And then you have issues that are individual and behavioral. Okay. So your individual differences are things like your genes, your developmental stage, what you've been through in your life, and that's going to affect how you perceive and respond to stress. Okay. Then you have the behavioral responses that come from that. These are things like your fight or flight. You know that feeling when something awful happens and you almost feel like your chest freezes? That's a physiological response, okay? But it's also a behavioral response because that is a result of sensations that are coming from your body preparing to fight. Okay? So you're getting like the adrenaline dump, you're getting the withdrawal of support from sort of the tertiary systems of your body so that you can keep yourself alive, essentially. So thank lizard brain the next time you feel like you're about to have a panic attack. Okay. All of this then contributes to physiologic responses. And you can see that this is a cyclical, iterative kind of process that goes around and around. All of these things affect each other. So at this point, you have a response to the stress of some sort. Now, I need to tell you about a couple of terms here. Probably most of you, if you remember your high school biology, are familiar with the term homeostasis. Homeostasis is systems normal, everything's functioning the way it should, no major health problems, nothing out of the ordinary. We're just ticking over. Okay. Allostasis is what happens when something happens. Okay. So allostasis, if this is homeostasis, allostasis is when you narrowly miss getting hit by a car and your whole body does this, right? So you're what I call jacked up. It's a technical term, jacked up to be prepared to protect yourself. Okay. So you're now in a situation where you have just almost been hit by a car and you are freaked out. Your adrenaline is going, all of your, what is actually called the HPA axis, all of the stuff that prepares your body to deal with a crazy, stressful, painful, injurious kind of situation is firing off. Okay. So that's allostasis, right? Here's homeostasis. Here's allostasis. Now, typically, allostasis is temporary. We bop up here because something ridiculous is happening, and then we should come back down here. What happens when you are under the kind of chronic stress that we all have been over the last several years is that you get stuck up here. That's called allostatic load. So instead of coming back to your baseline, now you're kind of stuck up here in this jacked up situation where you feel like you're just always under threat. Okay. I remember grad school, man. I remember just being like, oh, what else can happen? So that's allostatic load. Okay. So there's a good chance all of us are walking around because we are crazy people who are in academia pursuing advanced education. There is a good chance that all of us have some degree of allostatic load that we're carrying around at this point. So that's something to know because allostatic load has all kinds of other effects. If you find yourself feeling more fatigued, if you find yourself having trouble sleeping, if you feel like you are in pain more than you should be or more than you would be, myself, I have chronic migraines. When I really get stressed, they get worse. Okay. If you're getting sick more than you normally would, all of that emanates from this allostatic loading response because your body is doing things constantly that it's only meant to do short term. Okay. So all of that is causing you to feel tired and a little bit sick and frustrated. And maybe you can't sleep and maybe you're eating a lot of junk and, trying to make yourself feel better. Okay. I'm telling you this so that you understand why it's so important that we try to find some kind of balance and find a way to be resilient to this allostatic state that stress pushes us into. Okay. So I've probably just ruined everybody's day. So deep breaths, which are also part of finding balance. Okay. So that's a really quick and dirty allostatic loading overview. If you have questions about it, I'm happy to answer them. And I can actually see the chat at the moment. So if you have questions, feel free to pop them in there. Okay, so what in the world are we going to do about this? The truth is that nobody can fix this for you. I can sit here and talk to you about all kinds of things all day long, but you have to be the one to find your balance and restore your resilience. Okay, I love this quote because I think that this is something we don't do enough of. So Pema Chodron is a really well-known Buddhist scholar and teacher, and she talks about how having compassion for anybody means that we have to have compassion for ourselves first. So when you feel like you're getting frustrated with your advisor, your lab mates, your family, your kids, because you're stressed out and you realize that you're not being nice to them, the people around you, and you would like to show them some more compassion, or you'd like to be better with them, you first have to be compassionate toward yourself. And you first have to accept the things about yourself that you don't love, like being easily frustrated or feeling like you are not getting what you're supposed to get in class, or that you're not doing what you're supposed to do at work. Okay, so you have to have some compassion for yourself. So the reason I don't talk too much about self-care is because self-care is useless without self-compassion. So you have to start first by allowing yourself to be imperfect, even though everybody around you, your professors, your advisor, your classmates, is probably feeling like you should be perfect, or making you feel like you should be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. School is still school. You're still learning. Okay, this is all a big learning curve. So first you have to have compassion for yourself and allow yourself to be not so perfect, and accept that it's okay not to be perfect. Even the people you think are perfect aren't perfect. So when we think about this, I want you to realize, and this is where my nursey hat comes out, I want you to realize that grad school is kind of traumatic, right? So we've been through a whole lot of stuff over the last 3 years, but grad school itself is traumatic, okay? And what I have on this slide is actually the let me get the acronym right. It's SAMHSA, but it's the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA. This is their definition of trauma, okay? So trauma is an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as somehow harmful or even life-threatening, and then has lasting adverse effects on your ability to function across multiple domains, okay? So I think we can all agree that in many cases, grad school meets the definition of a traumatic experience, right? Because there's always something going on, right? You miss an assignment, you screw up in the lab, you miss a meeting with your advisor, whatever, right? So there's this constant like push, push, push. And because we're stuck in it, the event experience effect just keeps going around and around. Okay. And in academia, it's really important for us to realize that remember all that stuff I showed you on the first couple slides, COVID, schools closed, political stuff, all that junk. So we bring that in, right? And now we have, on top of all that, we have the trauma and the stress of grad school. Okay. So when we are interacting with other people, that trauma may come popping out, and it may get intensified because of whatever situation. For example, sometimes when we are in interactions with other people, especially as academicians, we are affected by those social structures. Okay. So there is a power dynamic, like it or not, between you and your advisor or your chair or your whoever they are, right? That person has some degree of control over your academic existence, right? Same thing with professors, financial aid, so on and so forth. But then also all that stuff we carried in before, still at work, right? So social structures can define our interactions, how we treat each other, how different groups interact with each other. These create a hierarchy, which also reinforces inequity and disparity. So if you have a situation where you are already part of a marginalized group, and you're in a situation where somebody's got power over you, that just intensifies that sense of inequity, your sense of helplessness, your feeling of being traumatized. Okay, this also adds something called structural stress. And structural stress is that burden that I talked about a few slides back, that strain of being part of a biased or being enmeshed in a biased social structure. Okay. So that you have fewer resources, you have less access to the things you need, you have less physiological and mental capacity to handle whatever's going on in your life. Okay. So when we are talking about the stress and trauma of grad school, it's not just you, it's you within the context. Okay. And that's what I want you to think about here, because sometimes you feel crummy. You feel like you failed and you have no idea why you feel like that. And it doesn't actually have anything to do with you, it's the situation. Okay. So that's the first place I want you to start to have compassion for yourself. Did I actually screw up? No? Then the situation has conspired to make me feel like I screwed up. Or someone is treating me in a way that makes me feel like I screwed up, even if I didn't screw up. Okay. So that's the first place I want you to think about self compassion. Okay. Another deep breath. Here we go. So handling this, and this is kind of my area of expertise, is this idea of trauma informed approaches to kind of everything. So when we think about all of this, this is where I want you to look at this slide, and I want you to understand that each of these pieces here, the 4 R's, the trauma informed approach to your existence right now, is about self-compassion. Okay. So realize that everybody is pretty much traumatized at this point. Okay. In some way, whether it's affecting them today or not, pretty much all of us have some kind of trauma having lived through the COVID pandemic. I know that we lived through it because we are here. Simple enough. Realize that everybody is affected within the system. Okay. And when I say the system, I mean grad school. Okay. So that probably everybody else is stressed out too. Even that guy that always has the right answer and, teacher's pet, blah, blah, probably also stressed. So then we have to think about this and respond by putting that into practice, and then try to resist re-traumatization, which is really what resilience is about, is resisting re-traumatization. So what does this really mean? So we have to think about for ourselves. And this, again, second step in that journey to self-compassion that I talked about. Second step is being aware of how both immediate and other historical and ongoing exposures to things shape our existence now. Okay. Then being open to consider how everything that is going on, the system we're engaged with, may unintentionally cause harm. Okay. Right. I mean, we're here because we all know that grad school is stressful. We're here because we want to find ways of reducing the impact of that on us. Okay. And then just generally, for all of us, being respectful and inclusive of people's diverse histories, contexts, and needs generally. Okay. So that's what being trauma informed is about. So I'm going to break this down a little bit more. So, first of all, realize we all traumatized. Okay. The trauma of the pandemic affected us all. And so we have less reserve. Remember about allostatic loading? There's less space for us between the stress and the baseline now. We may have fewer reserves. Okay. None of us was unaffected by this, even if we never got COVID and nobody we knew got COVID and everything seemed sort of fine, except that we were on Zoom for 3 years. That still affected you in some way. That still caused you stress in some way because it was a change, right? Change is not easy. And this was a whole lot of change really fast and under the threat of, well, death in the process. Okay. So if you feel like whatever the pandemic caused for you makes you alone or isolated in some way, you're not, even if it feels like it. Okay. You're not alone. We all went through this. We have all dealt with the ramifications of it, the reserve situation. Okay. So, first of all, realize that you are not alone. Whatever's going on with you, no matter how alone you feel, I promise you, you are not alone. There's all the people in this room. There are all the resources at UNLV. There are people who care about you in academia, probably in your family, among your friends. So you are not alone, no matter how alone you feel. Because grad school can be super lonely, right? We feel like, you're up in your office writing your papers all the time, and like you can't even talk to your family about it because they don't have any idea what you're talking about. right? So you're not alone. So realize that first. This has affected all of us, and that's okay. It's not, but it is. You know what I mean? Realize how this may affect us. Okay. So, whether you feel like you're still being affected by the pandemic or whether the thing that you're dealing with most right now is the stress and trauma of grad school, give yourself permission to feel that. Right. We sometimes do this thing where we're like, no, that's just emotional stuff. I'm not dealing with that. No, that's part of the allostatic triad, right? Is your brain as well as your behavior and your social context. You have to take stock of your feelings and let yourself have them. Acknowledge that you are probably tired from carrying this all around and step back whenever you can. Okay. So step back when you need to. If you feel like you're just at a breaking point, that would be a good time to take a break. But a better time would be before you get there. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit more about stepping back and getting some space when you need it. Respond to your needs and the needs of the people around you, right? Because if you're traumatized, there's a good chance your family may also be traumatized and they're worried about you and they're worried about themselves. So respond to your needs and the needs of the people that depend on you. Okay. So pay attention to what you really need, what they really need. Talk about what's happening. If you're just feeling like you're about to lose your mind, let that out, please. Talk to somebody, a friend, your sister, your mom, whoever might be around to listen. Find somebody you can talk to. Share as much control and choice with your team, your family, and your colleagues. And I really want to emphasize this because as academics, we all have very high standards for ourselves, right? We have got here to the point of advanced education. So we have worked really, really hard and we are still working really, really hard. And we think we have to do everything ourselves. It does not work. You literally cannot do everything yourself. Delegate anything you can. Okay. So if you are really struggling and you've got a lab team that you work with, maybe ask if you can, reassign some work and you'll pick up for somebody later. Ask your family to help out. Ask your colleagues at work. I'm in grad school and I've got this paper due. Is it possible we could switch shifts or could you cover this for me? It doesn't matter if they say no. Asking puts your needs out there, and just doing the asking, even if they say no, is going to make you feel calmer, I promise you. Validate concerns as understandable and normal, even for yourself. Okay. Again, this is self-compassion, right? I may think that this is a ridiculous thing to be worried about, and I feel like an idiot for even thinking about it. That's okay. Allow people to identify their support needs, people around you. If suddenly your lab mate is snapping your head off, maybe ask them, is there something that you need? I have had several conversations recently with my own grad students where I was like, okay, what do you need? Tell me what I can do to help you get through whatever this is. All right. Be aware of stress responses. Part of those letters after my name indicate that I am a forensic nurse, which is the person that you come to when you have been assaulted in some way, who takes care of you and collects evidence. And I once had a police officer bring in someone who had been assaulted to me and inform me that this person was not acting like a victim. And I said, how does a victim act? And I waited. I need to have an answer because a victim, somebody who has been traumatized, may react in a million different ways. And I've seen people be angry. I have seen people be hysterical. I have seen people be frozen. I have seen people be honestly kind of funny and like trying to make light of it. Everybody has a different stress response. So just allow yourself to have your stress response and just be aware that that's what's happening, and be aware that that may be happening. Other people around you are acting funny. That may be why. Assume everybody else is tired and stressed out too. I guarantee you that if you start doing this with the people around you, everybody will start being more open about how they feel, and you will all actually feel better. And finally, that fourth R, resist re-traumatization. So acknowledge when you hurt, when you are stressed, when you are exhausted, or even just that's all going around you. Because sometimes we go from being super stressed to being completely numb, which is a coping mechanism, not a great one, but it's self-protective, right? And so we have to acknowledge that there's something crazy going on. Whether you're dealing with it right now or not, acknowledge that it's there. Maybe put it away until you can take it out again and live with it. I put this graphic up here because throughout the pandemic, in a lot of hospitals, the nurses were given lavender everything, lavender hand soap, lavender, hand sanitizer, lavender bubble bath. And we were all like, enough with the lavender. That is not going to help our stress right now. Another thing you can do to keep yourself from becoming more traumatized or re-traumatized when you're in a stressful situation like this is practice saying no. And again, this is hard, especially as grad students, as postdocs, as early career academicians. Saying no is really hard because you don't know what's going to happen if you say no. You've never been in this situation before. Somebody asks you to do something, you know you can't do it, or you know it's too much, and you're like, yeah, sure, because you don't know what happens if you say no. The world does not end. I am here to tell you. 20 years in academia, I promise you, saying no does not end the world or your career or anything else. Okay. So learn how to say no. Acknowledge that you deserve to say no. This is another piece of self compassion. Allow yourself to just say no. Okay. When you need to. And again, engage in self compassion. No, not self care. Okay. So let's all just take a breath and be patient with ourselves. I want to talk a little bit more about my thing about self compassion because you can't pour from an empty cup. Okay. You cannot give what you don't have to give. You have to refill your own batteries in your own tank before you can give to somebody else or something else. All right. It's not being lazy. It's not being selfish. It's not being weak or like you can't do everything. It's survival. It's how you're going to get through this. You wouldn't treat anyone you cared about the way you've probably been treating yourself because you'd get arrested. Okay. If you were beating up on somebody else the way you are probably mentally beating up on yourself in a stressful situation, such as grad school, you would probably get arrested. So back up. Allow yourself to be where you are. And that's okay. And be okay with that. Know that it is okay for you to be where you are. The truth about this balance and resilience stuff, I'm about to get into how we actually make this all happen. The truth about this, the ugly truth, but the truth, you are the only person who can figure out what balance and resilience are for you. I can give you ideas, I can give you suggestions, but you are the one who has to figure it out. The only way to figure it out is to pay attention to yourself, be compassionate toward yourself, notice your feelings, your needs, your workload, what's going on around you. That's the only way you figure this out. Okay. You have to start because we get really tunnel vision, right? Especially in grad school, we get really focused on I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. And we forget to pay attention to like all of this. Like what's going on in here, what's going on in here, what's going on at home, what's going on at work, right? Because some of you probably also work full time. So you got to pay attention to that. You got to realize when you are getting the end of your rope, right? And you have to pay attention to that so that the next time you get to that point, you can say, whoops, I have to step back a second. You're not alone. Even the most amazing person you know probably wrestles with that wonderful thing called imposter syndrome. If you don't know what this is where you're sitting there thinking to yourself, oh, I shouldn't be here. These people are all smarter than I am. Why did I ever start this? I can't do this. Yeah, you can. You can do it. Not everybody is smarter than you. There's probably somebody smarter than you. But at any given moment, you're probably smarter than 18 other people. So don't worry about that. And especially for those of you who are in PhD programs, as you get closer to finishing your dissertation, whatever it's on, I promise you that nobody knows more about it than you in the world at that moment. That is the one moment in your life where you can be absolutely certain you know everything there is to know about whatever it is you're working on for your dissertation. Okay? So realize when you're feeling imposter syndrome. Everybody does. I promise you, everybody. There is a very well-known scholar in nursing named Patricia Benner. She is stinking brilliant. She wrote a book that everybody can quote by heart pretty much called Novice to Expert. And she was one of my professors when I was in grad school, and she told me herself, that sometimes she still is kind of like, oh, before she goes to give a talk. So everybody gets the heebie-jeebies. Perfection paralysis is real, and it can sink you. So I want to stop for a second and talk about that. Perfection paralysis is when the perfect becomes the enemy of good enough. Okay. And sometimes in grad school, all we need is good enough. Finished equals degree. My advisor in grad school used to say that to me all the time. Finished, whether it's fantastic or not, still means you got there, still got the degree. Okay. Nobody's going to care if the paper you wrote in 312 or whatever was absolutely fabulous right out of the box. You still got the degree. Okay. So, and just as an example, I teach a grant writing class in the School of Nursing for my PhD students, and my students last semester, they had drafts that they were working on of their grant proposals, and I said, okay, let's workshop some of these, and they were like, well, we don't want to show them to you, and I said, why not? Well, it's just a mess. It's really a mess. I'm like, okay, show it to me. They didn't want me to see it until they thought it was perfect, and I said, okay, look, you're looking for perfect for you. I'm looking for perfect for the grant funder or the reviewer or whoever. Those are probably two different things. So let's get you moving away from what's perfect for you and what's going to get you funded. Okay. So perfection paralysis, where you feel like you're just frozen because you can't do the thing perfectly. You are learning. I'm going to say that a lot for the next few minutes here. So, actual tips, tricks, things you can do. We've talked kind of in the abstract about some of this stuff, but I put together a few things that if you're just here going, come on, Dr. Burton, please just tell me something I can do so I'll feel better. Here we go. All right. This is your moment. Track your time like it's money, because it is in grad school. Time is money because you're paying to be here to some extent. Okay. So a few years ago, I did a fellowship for early career faculty. And one of the things they had us do right out of the box was for an entire week, write down how much time we spent on stuff every day so that we could see where we were spending our time, spending our money, essentially. Okay. So how much time do you spend dealing with your email? I was shocked at the end of the week how much time I was spending on just dealing with email every day. So I started shutting my email down and only checking it twice a day. This was really hard. I'm sure some of you are sort of like flinching right now at the idea of doing that. Turns out the world won't end if you don't respond to every single email within 5 minutes. I promise. Okay. People can wait an hour, a few hours, maybe even a day before you need to respond to them. How much time are you spending reading? Are you getting enough? Are you spending so much time reading that you're not actually getting anything out of it anymore? Are you spending the appropriate amount of time on your class assignments such that you can get things done without feeling like you're losing your mind and you're not getting trapped in perfection paralysis? How much time is going into your lab work, your practice, your research? How much is going into exercise? This is huge. Okay. As a healthcare professional, I would be extremely remiss if I did not tell you that exercise is the best treatment that we have for depression and anxiety. And by the way, it reverses some of the physiological effects of allostatic load. So if you're not exercising, please try to start. I read something recently about exercise snacking, which is like getting up and walking around for 5 minutes a couple of times a day. And it really does. It clears your head. I think you will be surprised if you do this. I actually just this morning did like 30 minutes of pumping iron, weightlifting kind of thing to get out of my head because I had too much to think about. It works. Sleep. Please be generous with your sleep budget. Okay. Sleep involves also, probably for some of you, that wind down period before you actually fall asleep. I usually try to start rounding up my family and getting toward bed at 8:30 because it will take me that long to get everybody settled, first of all, and then to get to sleep myself by 10 or 10:30 if I'm lucky. Okay. I usually get up between 6 and 7. So that's my budget. Okay. Family activities. Have your children seen you this month? What about your mom? Did you call her? You need to spend some time there too, because those relationships are important. You don't want them to be suffering as a cost of you trying to get to a better place for you in your life. Okay. Anything else is taking a chunk out of your life. So give it some thought, take a piece of paper and start tracking your time. So once you've done that, you got to get control of the clock. Okay. So you've got a budget. If time is money, you can budget it just like you can budget your money. If you're not budgeting your money, please start. Just by the way, it's a very good idea. There are apps for that. Decide how much time you want to spend or can spend on things. I frequently say to myself, I'm going to give this paper 2 hours and then I'm going to bed. Because I know that after 2 hours of working on the same thing, I'm probably not really being productive anymore and unable to focus. Okay. Abuse the heck out of your calendar. Cheat with it. Block your time way ahead when you know something is coming and do not be flexible. Okay. So if you look at your syllabus, the beginning of the semester, which please look at the syllabus, all of your faculty will thank you. Look at the syllabus. If you see that, this project or this thing or this paper or whatever is due 2 months from now, back up as far as you think you need generously to get it done without getting completely stressed. Put the deadline on your calendar, maybe even a little early so that you have a cushion, and then back up and set yourself a start date. I will start at this time. I will start on this, October 25th. And then it's due November 15th or something like that. Okay. That's another thing I learned in that fellowship is that by, even if you don't actually adhere to this, having it on your calendar puts you in a mindset where you're like, okay, I only have this much time to work on this. So I'm going to do that now. And then I'm going to put that aside. And I'm going to work on this next thing. Okay. Take your deadlines, just what I said, back things up a little bit before they're really due so that you have a cushion. Map out every semester. Okay. What do you want to accomplish, have to accomplish? Set timelines, even if there are no due dates. If you're like, well, I have this goal to publish a paper this semester. Okay. Pick a date. When are you going to submit that paper? When is it going to be done so that you can get it in there? And finally, don't join the busyness cult. Oh boy, is that a popular cult, especially in grad school. If you don't look busy, there must be something wrong with you, right? Don't fall into that trap, please. Don't join this idea of this cult of being busy all the time, because if you're busy all the time, I promise you're not actually getting anything done. Okay, so don't do things just for the sake of doing things. Do the things you need to do, and then do some things you want to do, and then if somebody asks you to do something beyond that and you feel like you can do it, then it's okay to say yes. All right, but up to that point, stick to your budget. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? This is a very old dad joke. Practice. So practice the things that really stress you out. Practice the things that will take up your time and max out your budget because you're stressing about them. Okay. This is another piece of like self-compassion. Practice the things that stress you out so that when they come along, you're ready and you don't get imposter syndrome and you don't get perfection paralysis. So I tried to come up with a list of things, and please add to this list in the chat if there are things you want to talk about that might be useful to practice. But one of the hardest things in grad school is the writing, because for most of us, there is an awful lot of writing in grad school, and we get frozen when we try to start writing. That's where we get stuck. So especially if you're working on like a new chapter of your dissertation or thesis, or you've got a paper that you're trying to get out, I swear to you, I have a group of people that I write with, and we are all violence, abuse, trauma kind of people. Every paper we have ever written, and we've been quite successful, every paper we have ever written starts with a blank page that says at the top, violence and trauma are bad. Because then we're started. It doesn't matter. Those words are never going to end up in the actual paper, but the page is no longer blank. And it's just sort of a psych trick, right? That helps you get started. You get past the staring at a blank page itis that afflicts people and makes them go at their desk. Write in tiny bursts. Okay. Do not do what a friend of mine in grad school always tried to do. She would try to schedule whole like 8-hour days to write. And I was like, you cannot write for 8 hours straight. You just can't. You'll get distracted. You'll get frustrated. You'll get bored. You just can't do it. So there's something called the Pomodoro method. And this is a fun little trick where you set a timer, you decide how long your Pomodoro. Don't ask me why it's a Pomodoro. I don't know. It always just makes me hungry because I'm thinking of pasta. So a Pomodoro is a set period of time, usually less than 30 minutes. Someone is in the chat saying that they do this and love it. Okay. Yes, it's fantastic. Usually it's less than an hour, somewhere between 15 to 30 minutes is your Pomodoro. Okay. And you sit down and do whatever it is for that Pomodoro. And if you are feeling good at the end of that Pomodoro and you want to go for another one, you start the timer again. Okay. And sometimes you get good at it and you can say, I'm going to do 4 Pomodoros, and I'm going to work on this, and this. Right. So write in tiny bursts. This is a really, really, really important skill because we think we have to sit down and write and write and write and work and work and work. You can't do it. You will lose your concentration. You will get a headache and be exhausted. And then it's all for naught anyway, because you haven't got anything done. So learn how to write in teeny tiny bursts. Write for 5 minutes. 1 sentence is quite enough. Even a couple of words to get you thinking about what you want to say next. And then you go do something else and you come back and probably you've meshed it out in your subconscious that it's better anyway. Be realistic about how long you can actually focus. Don't be like my friend and try to be writing for 8 hours. Please don't do that to your brain. For presentations, record a draft on Zoom. Make yourself watch it. I had to do this recently. I was recently inducted into the American Academy of Nursing, which is a huge honking deal in my field. And we had to record a 30-second video bio, and it was awful. I hated it. And I forced myself to watch it because I know that I talk too fast. I know that I sometimes mix up my words, and I know that sometimes I'm not looking at the camera because I'm just not. So I had to do it like 3, 4, or 5 times before I finally got something I was happy with. So record a draft on Zoom, force yourself to watch it. Okay. Then clean it up. Fix it. Whatever you saw yourself doing that you don't like, do it again. Fix it. If you need to have a difficult conversation with someone, talk it through with somebody who's not invested ahead of time. So if you know that you, God forbid, need to break up with your advisor, talk it through with a faculty member that you trust or a colleague that you trust or someone that can help you sort of work through, okay, what may happen? How are you going to respond if this happens? What might you say? The Office of the Ombuds is also fantastic for this, especially if it's somebody that is superior to you, like a lab director or an advisor or a committee member. The Office of the Ombuds is fantastic. They're completely confidential and they're lovely and will help you work through how you might approach this. For interviews, own your expertise and accomplishment. Yes, you did that awesome thing. Bragging is cool at this stage in your life, okay? When you're preparing for an interview, you got to prepare to believe that you are awesome. Sometimes it helps to have somebody else tell you that you're awesome and list out why, and then you just take that with you. Sometimes when I need to write letters of recommendation for people, I ask them to write it first so that I can just then poof up how wonderful they are. So if a student comes to me and says they need a letter of recommendation, I say, okay, I want a draft. And it's usually, I was very good at this and I did this presentation. And then I get to be like, it's fabulous and brilliant and would be an asset to any company or school, So be prepared to brag. It's easier if you can get somebody else to do it for you. And then you just go back and say, this is what, because then it's not your words. You don't have to feel the bragging guilt or whatever. Perfection paralysis. I'm hitting this again. Perfect is the arch nemesis of finished. Okay. Find a sounding board. Am I done with this? I don't know. Does this make sense? I swear when I'm teaching, I say, does this make sense more often than any other phrase? Because I need to know, did I do that right? Did I explain that well? And sometimes I get stuck. So I recently had to do a presentation on a topic I had never really paid a lot of attention to before. And so I was working on it and I'd spent several hours working on it. And I thought, I don't know what else to do with this. So I called my best friend, who is also a professor, and I said, can I just run this through with you? And she was like, oh, you have perfection paralysis. And I was like, and I'm putting that in the presentation. It was not this presentation, but it got me thinking about it. So find somebody that you can run it through with. Set a time limit, budget again. I'm going to work on this I have 2 hours that I can give. I'm knocking things over that I can give to this. And then I'm stopping. Pomodoros, time budget, whatever it takes. And remember, the started is the first step to finish. Okay. So you can't finish something you haven't started. So if you're worrying about something and it's preventing you from getting started, write down violence is bad. Then you have a not blank page. Even if that doesn't have anything to do with what you're working on, it puts something on the page. Maybe helps your brain shift gears, start working. Started is the first step to finish. I swear my advisor must have said that to me 100 times. That finished was a degree and started was finished. Okay. Second thing, communicate like your life depends on it as a graduate student, because it actually does. Think back to all that allostatic loading stuff. Luvvie Ajayi Jones is one of the funniest people on the planet. If you are not familiar with her blog or her books, she wrote a book called I'm Judging You. That was her first book. It was called The Do Better Manual, and it was basically a series of really hilarious essays on how not to be an idiot in the world. She is hysterically funny. I highly recommend her books and her podcasts, but she has this quote about when we are silent, we betray ourselves. And I just loved that, because even though she's usually joking around and being funny, saying that, I was like, this is central to that self-compassion thing, right? Because if you're not asking for what you need, if you're not communicating about what's going on with you, you're hurting yourself more. So ask for what you actually need, not what you think you can get, right? When you go to your lab supervisor and you're like, I need, 5 more hours on this, and you really need 8, that's not doing you any favors. Same thing with job interviews. Ask for the salary you need. Who knows? You may actually get it. Okay. Don't sell yourself short. Be clear on your expectations for yourself and for everyone else. Brag. Like I said on the previous slide, brag. Your accomplishments deserve to be celebrated. Yes, even the little ones. Hey, I wrote 5 pages today. Woohoo! Get a text going with your best friend that you can be like, I'm just going to text you stuff and I need you to cheer for me. That works. Okay. Remember that you are still learning. Cut yourself some slack. You're learning. You don't have to be an expert already. Mentors can help with all kinds of things. If you have good mentors around you, or if you need to find some, we can talk about I'm going to talk more about how to find good mentors, but they can only help you if you tell them what's going on. So you've got to communicate, and you've got to be really good at communicating in order to have a successful mentoring relationship. So a little more about mentorship. Who should be your mentor? Somebody with relevant experience. You don't want to be mentored by a chef if you happen to be a biologist. Okay. Mentoring all the time, your whole career, now and forever. Where? Someone who's as accessible as possible, even if you need to make an arrangement with them about that. Why? Because you don't have to figure it all out alone. How do you find a mentor? Networking, informational interviewing, just dig around on the internet, find somebody who seems to know something about what you're interested in and get a hold of them. A lot of times that works. Sometimes it doesn't, but what have you got to lose? It is work. Mentoring and being mentored do take work. Okay. So you need to know what you need. You got to think first about, what do I need and who can I get it from? So you need more than one mentor. In qualitative research, we call this triangulation, where you have more than one set of stuff that's feeding into your data. Know how you and your potential mentors prefer to communicate. If you are the type of person who needs that face-to-face, in the same room interaction, don't have a mentor who's in New York. Okay. You need to have them near you. All right. If you're that kind of person that just wants to walk into their office and be like, I need to talk, then you need to figure out who's close by. What do you need to know? Expectations. What do you need? What does your mentor need? And how are you going to share this information? All of my grad students get a mentoring contract from me that says, this is what I expect. You tell me what you expect. And this is where we're going to figure it out together. Because I had a student once, bless it, she was so smart and so talented, and she had passed her comprehensive exam already, and she wanted to quit the program. And I was trying to talk her out of it, honestly. And she sat there the whole time like this. And I finally said, Celia, look at me. Do you want to do this? Do you want to be here? Honestly? And she goes, no. And she'd been struggling. There'd been a whole lot of things going on that she hadn't told me about. And I was like, look, if you don't want to be here, don't be here. Go down to student affairs right now and withdraw. But I couldn't have helped her. By that point, it was too late. I couldn't help her because I didn't know what was going on. Last thing about mentorship, so important: confidentiality and collaboration. Always make sure that you and your mentor are on the same page about whether or not your conversations are confidential. I have personally been burned by this. So make sure that if you need something to be confidential, you get an agreement about that. Come on, there we go. Finally, you got to give yourself a break. This goes back to that whole self-compassion thing. You are not a machine. You are not, a programming string that can just run all the time. Okay. You got to do something you love sometimes. You got to do something silly sometimes. You got like play, what is that ridiculous card game? Codenames or, oh, for heaven's sake. The one in the black box. I'm sure somebody knows what I'm talking about. Cards Against Humanity. That's it. That's a good one. That's really silly and it will get you out of your head. Exercise, also very good for getting you out of your head. Go to a movie, read a silly book, take time for a absolute complete shutdown, no work once in a while. You can't do this every day, but when you feel like you need to do it, you really do need to do it. Take the night off somehow. Eat stuff that's good for you, but also sometimes eat things that just taste good. I freely confess I have an empty bag of Chex Mix on my desk because it tastes good. Exercise and meditation. I've already hit on both of those. Those are the only two things that are documented in the literature to reverse allostatic loading. So please, if you can do nothing else, go for a walk. If you can meditate, meditate. There are great apps for meditation. There's one called Insight Timer. There's one called like Buddhify, I think. There are lots of meditation things on YouTube, things you can do. Again, don't put any pressure on yourself with meditation. It is a practice. You will not be perfect at it. It's fine if you're not. And finally, one more thing that always works: get some rest. That's my dog. She's a champion napper. She can go to sleep in like 30 seconds, and I envy her for that. So truly rest. Rest your brain, rest your body. Sometimes you just have to let stuff go. I will embarrass myself now and tell you that I had the main idea that became the backbone of my dissertation in the shower. Okay? Because that's when you get good ideas, is when your mind and your body are doing something else and relaxing and not trying to overfocus. Okay? So always, always make time to rest. That's all I have. Questions? Comments?
Thank you so much, Dr. Burton. This was really eye-opening for us. And I'm pretty sure everybody found benefit out of this. But yeah, if anybody has questions, they can unmute themselves or type them in the chat. And okay. Joy has a question.
Yes, Joy.
Hello. My name is Joy Hill. Nice to meet you all.
You too.
So my biggest issue right now, because I'm in and out of the exercise, meditation every day, but how do you deal with like life transitions? Like I'll specifically say death. And it's not coming in one, it's coming in multiples.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Yeah.
determined to get done. I got 1 year left, so I'm not going anywhere. But I'm preparing for these things about to happen. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess your opinion would be great on that.
Well, my first advice to you is to figure out what are the various things that are happening. It sounds like several things are happening all at once. Okay, so I would first suggest that you do something, and maybe it's even like a visual thing where you just make flashcards or something where you have the different things that are happening, and then start thinking about, okay, what have I got to do to get through this? Okay, which of these things needs to be dealt with first, and then which one can I deal with second? And be very firm with yourself about doing them in the order that you have put them. Okay. Because sometimes we're like freaking out about we're moving and we need a new job and we need a new place to live, one at a time. Break it down as much as you can to one at a time. Because if you don't do that, you're going to try to do them all at once and you're not going to do any of them at all. That would be my first suggestion. My second suggestion, and this is just me, I like to write stuff down. I will, if I have a big decision to make, I will literally sit and do pros and cons, even if they sound ridiculous. Because that's how you figure out. Sometimes it's like talking to yourself, like you have to figure out how you feel. Right? So you kind of have to, like, if you can't really put it into words, sometimes starting to write it down in weird ways helps you think it through. So those would be my two suggestions. I would also really suggest that you find somebody you can actually bounce stuff off of that isn't going to like be directive. I've read something recently about, do you want to be helped, hugged, or heard? And I loved that because if you need, your partner or your best friend or whoever, helped, heard, or hugged. And usually, mostly we need to be heard. Sometimes it's the other stuff, right? But sometimes you just want to vent to somebody and you don't want them to fix it for you. And you don't need the hug, but you just want them to listen. You just need somebody to listen and maybe validate what you feel. So if you can find someone like that, who's not immediately going to be affected by whatever decision you make, and is not going to try to sway you one way or the other, that would be another thing you could do.
Thank you. I'll work on that.
You are very welcome. And I'm seeing lots of thanks in the chat too. And you guys are very welcome. It was my pleasure. I hope it was helpful.
Thank you for your answer, Dr. Burton. I have another question in the chat that was directly sent to me. It really resonated when Dr. Burton said, we have to learn to say no because we often say yes because we don't know what will happen if we say no. Any recommendations or advice for if we've already said yes to something that we know we shouldn't have and now need to have that difficult conversation about it? And I actually have that problem too.
I think we all have that problem at some point. Yes. So what I would do in that case is try to figure out whatever it is, are you able to do any of it? If you've said yes to something and you know you can't do it, can you do any of it? How much can you do? And if there's nothing you can do, that's fine. Then I would start by going to the person that you need to talk to and saying, I can't do all of this, but I can do this much. Okay. And if they say, well, that's not good enough, then you say, well, then I'm sorry, I can't do it. And that's not going to feel good. And they may be miffed at you, but you have to say, and you can just tell them why. I have too much on my plate right now. My kid is sick. My dog is sick. My mother's, whatever it is that's going on. Just be honest about why you can't do it. And even say, I thought I could do this. I took on too much. I can't do it. Okay. And this is where you have to practice having that difficult conversation. And this is a great time to go to the ombuds office and have 30 minutes with, I think it's Dr. Schwartz is the ombuds at the moment, or whoever, Tamar, I think is the other person in the office. Talk to them, and just maybe talk it through because they're objective. They don't know you. They don't know whoever, and it's confidential. So you can work it through. So that's something I do. Someone in the chat is suggesting finding a replacement if it's something you can't do. That's also a great idea. If you can go to the person and say, I can't do this, but I'm recommending, this is, and when you guys are at the point of reviewing journal articles, you will do this a lot. That somebody will contact you and ask you to review an article and you'll say no, and they'll immediately be like, can you recommend someone? So might as well start doing it now. It applies to life too.
Thank you so much for that answer. I think we already came to the end of this workshop, guys. So before we end today's session, we would like to thank to our presenter for sharing their time and expertise with us today, and thank to our participants for joining us today. And before you all log off, please take a few moments to fill out the survey that I just dropped in the chat. It helps us improve the workshops that we do for you guys. Thank you so much again, Dr. Burton, for being here, and sharing your expertise. Everybody have a nice and lovely day.
Everybody take care.
Bye-bye.
And rest.
Yeah.